Hi, welcome to WooPod episode 9, where we'll be talking about British work culture. My name's Rick.
I'm Susie.
And yes, we're going to be exploring what it's like to work in the UK, which some of you might be planning on doing. So we'll be covering stuff like communicating at work, hierarchy at work, work-life balance, taking time off, getting feedback, and of course, social etiquette, and why we keep saying sorry, please, and thank you every 10 seconds. So I've worked in the UK for about just over 10 years, and you've actually worked in the Far East a lot more than you've worked in the UK, right?
I've had a bit of a mix. I had a couple years in the UK, a couple years in Taiwan, Canada. I was in Iraq briefly, but I've been doing this Susie Woo thing for 5 years now. So I haven't had anywhere near as much real world work experience as you have.
Yeah, I guess actually I'd forgotten to count your time with Susie Woo because you're working for yourself, which is still obviously working in the UK. But I guess I'm thinking of like working for a company, sometimes for a big company, and what that's like. Yeah, I guess. So sorry, I should have counted your time at Susie Woo. But
I mean, I've done like quite a lot of teaching, which is obviously quite different because you're not in an office. But the experiences I have had in offices have been, I've just realized that it's not really for me. Maybe it was just the type of office, or often it's like I don't really buy into what the company's doing, or I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing. I've often felt a bit existential, like what is the point of my life?
Well, I can say I've often felt that way before, so yeah, I can agree with you on that one. I mean, I've only ever worked in offices. I've never done any other kind of job. I wouldn't say it like suits me. It's just something I can probably put up with a bit more than you can, perhaps. But I wouldn't say like I don't love working in offices. Yeah, it's not like it was never a dream of mine.
Yeah, I think it's like the office politics that I really don't like. I've been in nicer offices than others. Like I worked in the NHS briefly, and that was quite nice. Everyone was really lovely. But then I also did like recruitment in sort of a fancy company in London Bridge. Yeah, just the culture didn't quite gel with me. Like people seemed quite sort of proud of their status and very go-gettery. Yeah, I just thought it was really interesting. It was interesting to observe like how people behaved and treated each other and things like that.
I think that's actually a good point to start, actually. So thinking about hierarchy in British work, because generally speaking, compared to the Far East, I would actually say that a lot of hierarchies in Britain are what's called quite flat hierarchies. So it doesn't mean that you've got like tons and tons and tons of people above you and that they all need to be like super respected and, you know, kind of, you don't need to like bow down to them or anything. Generally, it should be a working environment where people are a little bit more approachable. You shouldn't be afraid to like share things. It's not as regimented as it is in other places. It depends on your industry, of course. But yeah, I mean, that's certainly my experience. The bosses I've had, and I must have had 5 or 6 bosses by now, possibly more. But I never felt like they were really trying to make me aware that like, I'm in charge, you have to listen to me and everything, do exactly what I say. It felt more like just a normal kind of working relationship. But when they told you to do things, certain things, you kind of had to do them, you know. That's the vibe. I've been quite lucky with the bosses I've had. They've all been pretty chill, to be honest.
Yeah,
so,
I think that's my experience as well. And also just hearing through other people. It's like the managers and the C-suite and the founders, they often seem quite relaxed and try to be more on your level, I think. They try to have more like a friendly relationship with you.
I think so. Like even some of the really big bosses I met, like as you say, the people who ran the company, owned the company, chairman, that sort of thing, look perfectly approachable because I think there is probably a growing culture of, you're expected to kind of just be just polite and respectful at all times. Whereas I do think in previous decades, it was more hierarchical, regimented. I mean, I remember when my dad told me when he started work, you had to address your superior by his surname, which
really?
I don't know. Yeah, which is exactly, see from your reaction, it's just a very old-fashioned, like super formal thing to do. Whereas it may still be the case in other countries, but that now is like, you would do it as a joke now. To call, excuse me, Mrs. Whatever, you know.
Yeah.
It just seems so formal and forced.
Yeah.
So
kind of relates to what we were saying in a previous episode, I think, in dating, about how people really like to not take themselves seriously. And if you take yourself seriously, that's seen as a very negative trait, meaning thinking, I'm very important, my status really matters, and you need to respect my status. That's quite a negative thing, isn't it?
I think you're right, actually. Yeah, it must all be related in some way because, yeah, if you were to sort of go around really acting like a boss and kind of shouting at people and telling them what to do and, micromanaging them, you would lose a lot of respect behaving like that. And people would leave the business as well. I think this is another thing because these days people don't really do a job for life anymore, a job that lasts 20, 30, 40 years. So if people didn't like a place of business, a lot of the time they could just move. Not in every case, but in a lot of cases, you could just go, look, I hate this. I'm leaving. Goodbye. Being really hierarchical and dictatorial is a good way of chasing people away and you'll lose your best employees. So I think managers certainly do feel that kind of, they probably balance that risk. You have to be in control. You'd have to be like aggressive about it.
Yeah. I wonder if it's a bit deceptive though, because often those people do actually have so much more power. Like they can get rid of you if they want to. Is it a bit insincere to be like, yeah, we're friends, but actually, if I don't like you one day, I can just affect your career?
Yeah, as far as your sort of like immediate manager goes, I don't know if they always have the power to hire and fire you. They can certainly contribute to it, but if they're just like one level above you, I'm not sure they always have the ability to like get rid of you.
Maybe if they're the founder or something.
That's true, yes. And maybe it's not always about acting like they're genuinely your friend. It's more just that they are friendly and respectful towards you. You realize that you're at work and you have to take things seriously, but at the same time, it's not like when you go to work, it's not a life or death. And if you screw up, I'm going to go crazy and stuff like that.
It's interesting how people often really like the managers and the higher-ups who can laugh at themselves and who don't mind other people making jokes at their expense. It's so kind of backwards, isn't it? It's like showing that you don't care about being respected is very admirable and worthy of respect. But it depends what it is, I suppose, because it's like if it's jokes, and that's the whole thing of if you're towing the line where it's clearly still a joke, then it's fine. But if you're actually being disrespectful, that's a different thing. And that's the whole grey area of British humour and what is okay and what is actually rude.
It's funny you mention that because I had a habit of if there were work parties, usually they give you free alcohol. So obviously I took full advantage of that and used to get really drunk. And then I would end up kind of like making jokes with like people way more senior than me. And I always would worry the next day, like, oh, did I say something that was like too far or a joke too far or whatever? But nothing ever happened, It was, but it's always like a risk that, if you like sort of joking around with them, it can backfire. Like I remember when I worked in Dubai, I did make a joke to two of the bosses about being late all the time. Which is a bit like, could be taken in a very bad way.
That is quite amazing, isn't it? That like you felt comfortable to make that sort of joke. A lot of context and a lot of cultures, you would never ever like expose your own flaw.
Well, absolutely. Like it's certainly, even in the Middle East, I think there's a little bit more of a culture of hierarchy compared to the UK. And you don't want to kind of step on anyone's toes, so to speak. So I did worry when I said that. I was like, oh God, I've said the wrong thing. They genuinely didn't care. They just laughed and then it was like anything else. So
yeah, worst case, they would just agree with you and maybe feel a bit embarrassed.
I think if someone took it the wrong way, you're kind of in their bad books. I did worry that like, oh God. But anyway, it was fine in the end. Maybe I was overthinking it, but yes.
But see that sort of joke, if it landed correctly, it could have made the two of you closer. You feel like, oh, we can all see each other's problems and it's all fine. And then you've just like, you've got a new level of your friendship then.
Yeah, exactly. That's the trade-off. So it's a very difficult, it's a very difficult thing. As I say, it does vary from job to job. If you join the army or something, it's going to be super regimented, obviously, because it's the army. But yeah, like vast majority of my experience, and I think other people's experiences when I've spoken to them, it's more chilled out. You have to be less deferential, so you don't have to sort of like shower your boss with all this respect and everything. You can also like challenge things. You can challenge people as well if you want in a polite way. It's quite easy to sort of like disagree with your superiors.
And often they actually appreciate that. They like someone who will challenge them. Yeah, because they know that they're not always right. Obviously, it really depends on the person.
You would hope that they think that, but obviously sometimes that doesn't happen. But yes.
Yeah, I guess I've been a manager for 5 years. Not a big team. It was like, small scale. But I definitely feel uncomfortable if people are just trying to please me. Like we might go for, let's say, a dinner and people sat around and sort of waiting for me to speak. And I'm like, you guys just talk. Like, you don't have to wait until you're addressed.
No, not at all. That would be weird. Yeah. That's very formal, I think.
Yeah, I prefer to feel like on a level, more like friends with people.
Yeah, I really can't imagine you being like the boss from hell or something like that. I just don't see that in your character at all. But have you found any have you found it tricky at any points, like when you need to tell people about if they've done something wrong, like not the right way, and you need to kind of deliver that? Have you struggled
Yeah,
to
see,
do
this
that,
is it's actually really difficult, because if you do feel too friendly with someone, then when there is a problem and you need to give feedback or even let someone go, that can feel so much more awkward. It feels like a personal attack then, as opposed to this is work, this is business.
And if I'm right in saying this, it's a thing that's actually shared in sort of British working culture and some working cultures in the Far East as well. Like there's a reluctance to kind of give negative feedback and worry because you're worried about hurting somebody's feelings or making them lose face or something.
Yeah.
So it can get very tricky.
100%. Yeah, no, that's by far been the hardest thing. I think it took a good year or two to really be like, it's actually helpful for the person to know what's going wrong when it's going wrong, rather than waiting ages. And then it just helps to be honest with people so they know where they stand and then they have the chance to improve. Otherwise, you're just not helping anyone, not yourself, not them. It's always hard, isn't it? Especially if it's something that's like if it's very tangible and objective, then you can phrase that in a way that makes sense. But if it's something more subjective, or you don't feel like you've got enough concrete evidence, it can be really hard to bring something up.
Well, I think that's why it's quite hard in sometimes in my line of work, so advertising, which is sometimes extremely subjective because it's just a piece of writing or an artwork or something, and you have to evaluate it, and it's just a game of opinions after a certain point. So it's really hard to kind of navigate that sometimes. And you're also, if you're sort of saying that their work isn't up to standard, you're almost having a go at them and their taste, right? So that's even harder. It's a piece of them that you're attacking, really, which is difficult. But I think this is why in British working culture, when we're giving feedback, we like to give it very indirectly. So you end up saying, like, a good one is when someone makes a suggestion and then like whoever's in charge will be like, yeah, we could do that. Or we could do something. Or, and then they say the thing that they want to say, which is tricky. To be honest with you, I've more appreciated the kind of blunt feedback. It's not happened to me very often, but I've had a couple of bosses where they were much more direct. It just cuts out all of the noise, really. But it doesn't happen. I don't think it happens that often in sort of British workplaces, to be honest. It's always like, oh, that's an interesting idea, but could we do it this way? Or like, maybe it needs just a little this thing, or it's nearly there, but it's not quite right, and all this stuff. It's
yeah.
I don't know.
I can
it gets
imagine
in the way for me.
It's nicer just to know where you stand, because then if the feedback's positive, you really trust it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 100%. And even as a Brit, we're both Brits, and sometimes when you do hear these kind of like coded bits of feedback that are covered in politeness, even I get confused. I can't always tell like exactly where I stand. And one of my bosses was always so polite about it. It reached the point where I just sort of didn't know how it was going on. And then I had to wait until our like half year review to find out. And she'd just be like, okay, everything's fine. And I'd be like, well, I didn't know that because I can never tell from our feedback how things are going.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
It's quite frustrating.
Because she was being so polite and wanted to not offend you.
Yeah. It was just super kind of, tiptoeing around everything, which has its limits, I think. It really does.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way that we are more indirect in giving feedback, this comes under low context culture traits.
Okay.
So low context. No, it doesn't. Because low context is more when you say what you mean, isn't it? Yeah. High context is when things are understood implicitly through like body language, unspoken rules. So usually East Asian cultures are more high context. British culture is supposed to be low context. So that's where we really have to explain what we mean and not assume the listener knows until you've explained it properly. But this whole indirect feedback thing that makes us less low context.
Yeah, that's what confuses me, I think. I have heard this about the differences between maybe like, Western workplaces and Eastern workplaces, but we're pretty indirect as it goes. I think in other parts of Europe, they're very direct. I would say like Germany, Scandinavia. I remember we worked with a Danish company once, and they were just super blunt about everything. They were really lovely people as well. But there were just points where And I do really value directness as well, but there were even points where I was just like, wow, okay, that's like quite, it's quite full on.
I have to say, like, sometimes when, like, say if my friend is saying, oh, someone at work said this, or I often might ask, where are they from? Because if they're like Eastern European, it's like, there you go, different communication styles. Anyway, like, so if they're from Eastern Europe, they're more likely to speak more just bluntly. And if you speak bluntly from a British perspective, that can be really rude. You'll think the person's upset with you. You think there's some sort of argument. Yeah. But from their perspective, they're like, no, I'm just speaking clearly.
Yeah. It's just we need to solve this problem. It's not really about me or you. We just need to get this done. That's how you get it done. No, I've also had that. There was a lady I worked with. I think she was from Bulgaria. Might be somewhere else. But anyway, she would be very blunt with her feedback, and actually quite a few people in the office were always just like, oh wow, you have to look out for her. She can be very like direct cutting sometimes and everything. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she had a reputation for it, but I think to her she was just like, no, I'm just saying what the issue is and fix it, I wasn't trying to be rude or anything.
And it's really hard to hear that kind of language if you're not used to it and not feel confused or upset or offended or something. It's like, because it's like, well, if I said that in my culture, that would be like really rude. And it's hard for me to hear you say it like that and remember that it's a cultural difference.
You can't, in that split second, you can't unlearn the decades of like being cultured in a certain way, being socialized in a certain way. You can't just like ignore all that in a minute. You need to learn how to deal with it. I had an experience with that working in Dubai a little bit because there were just slightly different expectations of work, but slowly you do ease into it. But I'd say it took like probably months, if not a full year, to kind of really just be like, okay, this is how you navigate that and this is how you do things.
How would people communicate there?
Actually, in terms of communication, not like fairly similar to probably a bit more direct than the UK, but not in a way that was like, shocking or anything. It was other things, kind of like meeting times. That was a big one. Just getting used to things often happening late, or like the time not really being a set time, just like a more vague, it'll be done this afternoon, it'll be done this evening kind of thing, dealing with that. Or sometimes when we were dealing with clients, so the people who are paying us to do the work, in some cases you had to be much more deferential, and challenging them was like, you had to be very careful about how you did that because it was about saving face. That was much more important in my experience over there. This was all for one company, by the way, but I was told by other people that it was quite a common theme. So yeah, it takes a bit of getting used to, but yeah, you can't just like switch it off.
Yeah.
Whenever you feel like it, it's going to stay with you.
Yeah. I think in a way my experience of Taiwanese culture was kind of the opposite to someone being too rude and blunt. It's like things can seem fine, everyone's happy, everyone's being kind and polite to you, but actually that doesn't necessarily mean that everything is actually fine, because there's a lot of unspoken things that people are aware of that they won't say out loud.
Did you know about these unspoken things, or did you have to like slowly?
Long time of getting used to people and then realizing, oh, okay, there might be issues, but people will just not say them to your face, potentially.
So how did you find out about them? What would you...
Well, I can't think of a specific example, but it's just getting used to the whole culture of, on the surface, things seem fine, but actually there's many, many things going through people's heads that are not apparent just from their facial expression or body language. Yeah, it's much more, people are able to sort of hold their opinions more quietly to themselves, I feel, in general.
Tricky, very tricky to manage.
Yeah.
I think a key difference I can think between the way we work and then maybe how things work in East Asia, definitely work-life balance. It's completely different. We actually have a few friends, don't we, from China who've come to work in the UK, and they seem to enjoy to some extent the more relaxed pace, the shorter hours. I think they've grown to really appreciate just how it's a lot more chilled in the UK. Sometimes when I've spoken to them about moving back to China, they've sort of gone like, oh no, like going back to super long hours.
I can totally understand that. I think it would be, just the level of intensity is totally different. Yeah, I think that's probably a big reason why lots of people choose to stay here long term. It's just like more relaxed. Like, yeah, your leisure time is respected. Like, that's just nice, isn't it?
It's the 9-to-5 culture, which is still, even now, is still a really big part of British working life. You come in around 9,
but these days
9.
It's like 10 till 4, I swear. Most people I know work pretty much 10 till 4. Like they'll arrive late, they'll leave early, no one cares.
I have seen that more and more. I don't do that personally, but yeah, like
Sure.
a lot of people. No, it's true. But yeah, you kind of come in and the first hour is almost like you're kind of setting yourself up for the day.
Yeah, make
even
a
though
coffee,
you should have started
have a
work.
chat.
Yeah, exactly. Get settled in, whereas you should have started work an hour and a half ago.
Yeah.
And then yeah, you're like, well, it's 4:30. It's 4:30 now. I'm getting a bit tired. I've kind of done most of my stuff. I can finish some of it tomorrow, or maybe it's all done now, so I don't have to be here anymore. Or I mean, obviously, you could start a new project, and you think, well, we can just do that tomorrow. So then it's about 4:30, and you just sort of think, I'll just go home. And then nobody really bothers that much. Like, it's not a criminal offense,
I wonder where this has come from, because from a company's perspective, it's really not great to have your employees like slacking off for half a day. Do you think it's because there's more awareness about the limitations of people's concentration and how they actually need to feel happy to get the creative juices flowing, and they can't just sit at the desk 9 to 5 and produce their best work? Do you think it's some sort of change of understanding about how people work best?
I do think there's more understanding of just like when you're done with the day. It's not about work right up until the last minute. You're basically, energy-wise, you're basically finished. You're not going to concentrate much more than this.
Mm-hmm.
Does it really matter if you go home now? Not really. So just go and it'll be fine. And then I think with our generation as well, we're just getting as much done as possible and being as efficient as possible is just not that highly prized anymore. I don't think people just don't take their work as seriously as they used to. Like when I hear stories about like my grandparents' generation, our parents' generation, I just think work was just a much more serious place than it is now.
Do you think it's complacency?
Yeah, because people just don't want to work that hard anymore.
Yeah, there's not really the fear often. People don't have the fear of, if I don't work hard, what's going to happen? For some reason.
I'm going to get fired. Maybe it's employee protection, what makes people feel like that. Maybe it's, I don't know why it is that we've just relaxed a bit, but there has been a definite shift because you hear stories about definitely grandparents' generation, and it sounds a lot more like what our friends from the Far East are describing. Hierarchical, long hours, expected to do absolutely loads.
Well, I think lots of people from other cultures would say that it's laziness.
Oh yeah, I mean, maybe it is, yeah.
Yeah, it's just sort of maybe like a habit of laziness that sort of crept in. But it just seems really odd that companies and bosses kind of put up with it. But even they often enjoy that work culture, right?
Maybe there's just a broader perspective that we've reached in our society, at least, where we just think like, okay, do your work, but don't make yourself a slave.
Yeah.
It's not the whole of your life isn't revolving around work. Like it is about ultimately having a balance, It's even stronger in places like France, where it's very hard to be fired. People take their free time extremely seriously. And as I'm led to believe, it's like, 5 o'clock comes around, you are out the door. There's no hanging around, and you do what you're expected to do, what's in your contract, and that is it. No extra work for free. You're not working loads of overtime, and that's life,
Yeah, maybe it's a positive progression. It's sort of people are looking beyond work to find their sense of meaning in life.
I think that's a very positive thing. I do think, though, if everyone works less and less and less, that eventually does screw things up a bit, because then you can't pay for things as a society.
If you've got competitors in other countries, then at some point that's going to become quite obvious.
And I think that is actually starting to affect Europe quite badly now, unfortunately. I mean, you look at countries like China in the past few decades, they've all worked so ridiculously hard and the economy's gone like this. And they're able to invest all this money and do really well. India is another example. Taiwan, all kinds of South Korea, all these kinds of places. It has paid off. You can't say it hasn't paid off.
I think that there's also that growing trend of the more affluent the culture becomes, and most people are doing well for themselves. You get people thinking more like, what is this for? And do I really want to work this much? And blah, blah, blah.
Maybe you reach the stage where you want to enjoy the fruits of your labor, and then that's what begins the decline.
Yeah.
I sort of think in the UK we're kind of like that. We're when you're on a roller coaster and then you just tip over the top bit. We've kind of tipped over. We're kind of born just after we tipped over the top bit, really, and now on the way down. Anyway, yes. Also connected to work-life balance is taking holidays. This is quite a big one. So, yeah, I think it's fair to say that when you're working in the UK, you're expected to use all of your holiday, and that's not seen as a bad thing. You know, you're actively encouraged to do it. Like, I remember when Christmas comes around, your bosses are on you, like, make sure you take your time off. You've still got time off to take, you know, make sure you take it and everything. And I always felt that was very supported. I was never made to feel like it was bad that I was taking time off or anything like that. It was always just making sure that it fitted with everybody else's schedule, and that was it.
Yeah, there's no sort of bonus points for not having a rest. Although having said that, I think often CEOs and stuff will publicly praise people who work longer hours and show that they're sacrificing their personal time for the company.
And if a few, yes, sometimes you see it in like business news, but I don't know if I've seen CEOs say you should take less holiday. I'm not sure if I've ever seen that. They say work longer hours, but I don't think I've seen them say, oh, you shouldn't take as much holiday. I've not seen that before. Well, not to my knowledge.
No, I think often there's a culture of like work hard, play hard. So it's respected that you should have a decent, you know, relaxing holiday because you've worked so hard.
Yeah, that is a thing in quite a lot of industries, work hard, play hard.
How about things like after work, going to visibly relax and have a drink with your colleagues or your boss?
I've heard this is quite tricky for some people because, especially in the UK, because a lot of socializing revolves around drinking. It's just beginning to change now. Like, people are more conscious of doing like non-alcoholic activities. For example, I'm just starting a new job, and my boss said, "Oh, it'd be nice to go out for drinks." And he took the courtesy of saying, like, "Oh, by the way, like, are you a big drinker or anything, or do you enjoy drinking? Like, is that something you're actually into?" Because he wanted to make sure that the activity was suited me as well. Lucky for him, I do enjoy drinking, so it'd be absolutely fine for us to go to the pub. But I think in times gone by, they would not have asked you that. The assumption would be, well, we're all going to go to the pub, obviously, because that's what everybody wants to do. It is changing now, but it's tricky for some people because they don't like going to the pub. It's too loud. They don't like drinking. They don't want to go to a bar. They don't want to go to a nightclub. They feel like they don't want to socialize in that way, but they feel it might damage their standing at work because they aren't fitting in. They're seen as antisocial, and it can cause issues. So it is a bit tricky. Sometimes people just don't want to hang out with work as well, but you're scared of saying no because you're like, oh, I don't want them to think I'm not involved. I'm not a team player.
You know what it's like in Japan? You're very much expected to go for work drinks. Drink a lot if you're asked to drink. Like, the boss will do like toasts and you'll all drink at the same time. So people end up getting just completely, absolutely off it. But it's like a huge pressure, and it's quite stressful for people, especially if they don't want to drink or get drunk.
Of course, I can imagine that's extremely difficult for a lot of people. I mean, I think I would thrive in that kind of atmosphere, but that's not good for a lot of people. Very, very tough. I would say, as I say, it is changing these days, and I feel like if it's a proper sort of up-to-date modern workplace, they would be more chill about you not coming. I still think some places they would want to encourage you to come along and everything, hang out, that sort of thing. But yeah, I feel like more and more it is changing. It's not all going to be about drinking. And if you don't want to come, they just be like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
We'll do something else. Maybe next time.
Oh, yeah, there's something I want to talk about. So I did an internship in China once, in Chengdu. They had a napping room, like a room where you could go and lie down on the sofa. And I was explicitly told, this is where you can lie down in the afternoon. And I was like, is that serious? Because I will definitely use that opportunity, but I don't want you to think that I'm lazy. I did have a nap once or twice, but I felt really bad about it. And I was like, oh my God, everyone knows that I'm napping. This is so bad. Because in the UK, we do not nap, right?
No, absolutely not. You could get in trouble for doing that. I think people would assume that you're ill, you haven't slept enough the night before, like, what are you doing? You're just not conducting yourself properly. Like, yeah, sleeping at your desk is just like, no, what are you doing?
I really dislike this about our culture. You know, like in East Asia, they usually at lunchtime, from very young, obviously in the UK, young children have nap time. But once you start primary school, that's not a thing anymore. But they still have this ritual of like a 20, 30 minute, put your head down on your desk after lunch. I think even up into secondary school. And then at work, you can do the same thing. But I think it's so good because there is that dip in your circadian rhythm and you need that rest. And for me, it's so clear. There's no point me doing any work because I just have to switch off briefly. But there's no way you can go and do that. And it's really annoying.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Like, yeah, especially after lunch. Yeah, would it hurt to have just half an hour or even an hour?
It'd be good
if
for
you would
you, I
stay the
think.
extra time?
Recharge, come back fresh.
Exactly.
New ideas, new energy.
In Spain, it's always been very popular, the siesta, where they have a sort of break in the afternoon and like a little nap maybe. So, yeah, I don't know why we just persist with it. I've never napped at work. I don't think I've ever done that. You just have to power through, drink some tea,
if you're
drink some
not at
coffee or
work?
something.
Like, would you like to nap?
I struggle with napping. I want to get better at it because I think it is quite good for you. But yeah, I do struggle just to like switch off in the middle of the day. But tell me, like, so in this nap room, it's just a sofa.
Well, it was
not even
I think
pillows
it also
or anything.
doubled up as like a client room. So it was like a fancy sofa, and if they had clients in, which wasn't very often, they would take them into that room. But seeing as it wasn't used very often, it was the nap room.
So, but it was just one room. But what if there's loads of people who want to nap? Then what do you do? Can you sleep at your desk?
Good question. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's just generally quite normal to put your head down on your desk. Obviously, since being back from East Asia, I've done that. Like at uni, I had the name Snoozy because I am someone that likes to sleep, and I think I just need more sleep than the average person. So, you know, I'd have a nap in the day or whatever. But if you do it at a desk, or so I go to a co-working space, there's really comfy sofas, and I might just sort of lie down on the sofa, not fully, like my feet are still on the floor, but I'm just kind of sleeping there. And every time, like, you can hear people saying, oh, you know, people comment on it, they think you're ill, they're not sure if they need to help you. Like, often people will come and see if you're all right. And they, you know, they think they're doing the nice thing, which I guess they are if they think you're genuinely ill. But it's like, can a woman not just sleep when she wants to?
Yeah, that is it is one of the most natural things you could possibly do. And everyone's running around like, yeah, you're ill or something's gone wrong, that you just want a little nap in the day.
Annoying.
Maybe that's how twisted we've become as a society that we can't even sleep properly anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, it's just not a thing. Like napping at work I'm struggling to think of any job where it would be acceptable to do that. It's just not.
Can you imagine? No, especially if your boss walked in, you would not feel in any way comfortable doing that. You'd assume you're going to get fired.
Yeah, 100%. It's very scary.
But yeah, I really empathize with people coming from other cultures and being like, oh, wait, so I have to just like sit upright with my eyes open, even if I'm mentally asleep, just to look like I'm busy. Yeah, listener questions. So the first one is, why don't Brits work harder? Then they'd get more money.
Well, it's a good point. I guess it is technically true that we could do that. Yeah, it's like we were saying earlier. It's just we've just reached the point where we generally don't want to, and we kind of don't. Well, I was going to say we don't have to, but I mean,
probably a lot of people do have to. Maybe it's when push comes to shove. Like if you do actually really need the money, then you are going to work harder.
Yeah, like, you know, do reasonably well at your job, but just don't make yourself a slave to it. Basically, that's just part of the working culture now. Yeah, it's not all about go, earn as much as possible. Like, just, you know, just keep it chill.
Maybe a different perception as well about how much money someone needs. I think a lot of people are okay with getting by on not that much, actually, aren't they? Yeah, if I can kind of exist, I'm fine. The next one. My boss always says my ideas are interesting. Does that mean he doesn't like it? It really depends on the tone, right? I don't think it's true that when a British person says, oh yeah, that's interesting, that doesn't always mean that they think it's rubbish.
Yeah, it really just gotta learn the tones. Like, oh, that's really interesting. Oh, I never thought about that actually. That's like a good way. And then if they're like, it's interesting. I mean, you could just tell, hopefully from their face, whether what they mean. Interesting. Yeah, much flatter. Yeah.
But sometimes it's almost like it's something you say when you're not sure. Yeah, that is interesting. And it's like I'm thinking about it and I don't actually know what to say yet because it's so interesting that it's baffled me and I don't have an opinion yet. So I'm just saying that it's interesting.
That is true. So it could be like 3 different things, which is even more confusing. You're right, actually. I've had that a few times ago.
I guess sometimes it can be quite similar to, 很特别 in Chinese, which means special. But I think it's used in the same way, like, oh, interesting. It's not necessarily great, but it's maybe different to what was expected.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Or special.
I do. Yeah. Well, I've just said it there. Interesting. But because but I'm using it in the literal sense because I actually found what you said interesting.
Yeah.
But very confusing. Just got to figure it out. You hear it enough times, you'll begin to know the differences, I think.
And know the person. get to know what they're like, how they use their language. Everyone's different ultimately, I guess.
It's going to be tricky, but it's going to take some time. We have one last question, which is silence in a meeting in the UK a bad thing? Yeah, that really depends on context as well, I guess. If you said something really inappropriate, that might be met with silence, which would be tricky. But also, yeah, it could just be people thinking it through. It doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. What do you think?
If everyone is usually quite chatty and then suddenly they're silent, that might be a bit weird. I mean, it really, really just depends on the group, doesn't it? Maybe this person has had an experience where everyone's talking and then they said something and then it was like the silence fell, which can feel a bit unnerving. But maybe it's just because people don't know you as well. They're almost interested. They want to listen and observe and see you. And that makes people go quiet sometimes when they're just curious sometimes, maybe. If you're the person who usually doesn't speak much and then you speak, that can happen.
Yes,
people
that's
go
true.
quiet
That's
because
true.
they're like, oh, the quiet person's speaking.
That's also true, yeah. Yeah, it really depends on a few different things. Do you know if it has like particular significance in Far East?
Generally, I think there's more silence because people are listening to whoever's in charge of the conversation. People would absolutely not interrupt or butt in unless they've been asked.
Oh, wow,
Usually,
okay.
that's stereotype.
Sounds like a good thing.
Yeah, much more helpful because then if you're running the meeting, you can actually have control of it and not be just trying to fight everyone.
Oh God, yeah, I've been in many meetings like that. Yeah, unfortunately.
Very annoying.
Okay, that's all we've got time for this week. We hope if you're working in the UK or thinking about coming to work in the UK that it's been quite helpful. Join us next week for episode 10 of WooPod, which is actually the last episode in the series. Quite sad, but hopefully you've enjoyed it.
We're just doing 10 episodes in this series, but hopefully we'll be back with some more great conversations for you. If you have enjoyed it, please leave us a review and we'll see you next week.
See you. Bye.
Bye.